I have huge news that is going to apply to everybody, not just people who live in Texas. I'm sure you've heard, but last night, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton formally announced that he is charging? That's not what he's doing. He's challenging, I guess as AG, he could be charging. He's challenging useless Texas Senator John Cornyn. Here was the announcement.
I'm announcing that I'm running for U.S. Senate against John Cornyn, who apparently is running again for his 5th term, which would put him there 3 decades. It's definitely time for a change in Texas. We have another great U.S. Senator, Ted Cruz, and it's time we have another great senator that will actually stand up and fight for Republican values, fight for the values of the people of Texas. Look, he said 24 years of this, which I think is plenty given his lack of production. It's hard to think of the things that he's done good for Texas or for the country. I can certainly point to many things like his gun restrictions, his lack of wanting to fund a border wall and disagreeing with President Trump on that, and even opposing President Trump's election in 2016 and the most recent election. So there's certainly many things to focus on that he has not done, and I think it's time that somebody held him accountable for that.
Okay. First, this is majorly important for every single person watching, and I'm going to explain why. Here is how it has worked for the longest time. You see, right now, maybe you're frustrated with the lack of action from Congress. Why can't we get something good out of the House? Why can't we get something good out of the Senate? Trump's been there. It's been 3 months. Where are the good bills? Why are we not codifying this into law? Why isn't the House? Why isn't the Senate doing anything? Why don't they do anything? Okay, well, allow me to explain why they don't do anything. They don't do anything because the long-serving establishment Republicans, they are the ones that hold the bulk of the power in the House and the Senate, you see. If you've been there for a really long time, what you've done with that length of time is you have managed to buy influence. You have managed to figure out the ways to suck up to the DC swamp. And when you suck up to the DC swamp, what happens is money comes pouring into your campaign. We'll use, actually, a perfect example of this would be the defense industry in this country, the military-industrial complex. It's a perfect example of this. If you're a Republican senator, you can look and find all the waste and fraud in our defense sector, and it's staggering. And you would think tackling that kind of theft from the taxpayer would be a priority, but you know what actually fills the campaign coffers? Sucking up to the defense contractors. You pass another ridiculous $1 trillion defense bill full of waste, lo and behold, Boeing, Raytheon, all the defense contractors will write you large checks to keep you in power. With those checks, your campaign coffers fill up. You get to run for re-election every 2 years or 6 years, depending on if you're in the House or the Senate. And what you do is you take that large quantity of money that you've hoovered up from the DC swamp and you flood the airwaves. Today it would be more social media because that's where a lot of the campaign advertising's done. But you turn on the news at night and you see commercials about how conservative, how right-wing you are. I'll close the border. I'll fight for you. They're flooding YouTube, everything with that. Now, they don't do anything. In fact, they harm the country until it's time to get reelected, where they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars telling the brain-dead GOP primary voter how far to the right they are and how much they support President Trump. And that is exactly how we haven't gotten anything done, because we can't get these people out of Washington, because the GOP primary voter continues to elect the same losers over and over and over again. We elect them, they go back to Washington, they are the heads of these really important committees, and they stop any and all reform. They are there, John Cornyn and his types, they are there to protect the swamp. They wear a Republican label, but that is their central role, and they know that's their central role. They are the ultimate in controlled opposition. Are you angry about the communism that has flooded the United States of America? One of the main reasons communism has flooded this country, and more importantly, this government, is because people like John Cornyn will stick their foot in the door to keep it open enough so the communists can get in. He is there to ensure the enemy has access to destroy you, and he's been successful at it for 24 years now. That's why we don't get anything done in the House. That's why we don't get anything done in the Senate. And so The reason they keep screwing us over, we just kind of talked about it. The reason Republicans like James Lankford will try to pass an amnesty bill, which he did last year. The reason John Cornyn will pass a gun control bill. He worked with Democrats to pass a gun control bill after Uvalde. The reason he does that is John Cornyn, honestly, if you have to defend him, John Cornyn gets it. He understands the game. He understands that he can do these things, especially when it's not an election year. He can screw you, screw me, screw over the entire country over and over and over again. He'll raise enough money to lie about it when election season rolls around. That's how the game has worked. John Cornyn has simply been playing the game that works for a very long time. Screw over the voter for 5 years. In year 6, take your millions, tell the voter you're conservative, the voter reelects you. Now, how do we change that system? Because I think you would agree, no matter where you are, we have to change that system. We have to change the way things are done in order to save the country. We can't stop communism if John Cornyn is still there holding the door open for them, if Mitch McConnell is there, if James Lankford is there, if Tom Tillis is there, if Bill Landry is there, if Mike Rounds is there, if you get the idea. We can't stop the communists if these losers are still there aiding and abetting them. We have to start taking them out in primaries. You're not going to take out John Cornyn in a general election, and you wouldn't want a Democrat in there anyway. The only way is to replace these people in primaries. And if we want the others to straighten up, if we want John Thune to stop being useless, Cassidy, if we want him to stop being useless, did I call him Landry? Whatever, Cassidy, if we want him to stop being useless, Mike Rounds, Tillis, all of them, if we want them to take their red state Senate seats and actually do red state things with them, then we have to make an example of somebody. Do you know what decimation is? You ever heard that term? Decimation. A lot of people falsely believe that decimation means everybody is wiped out. That's not true, actually. The term decimation comes from Latin, and the term came from the Roman army, you see. And when a Roman army unit showed cowardice or failed terribly on the field of battle, they would draw straws, for lack of a better way to put it. And what would happen was they would take 10 men, and one of them, only one, the guy who got the short straw, he would be beaten to death by the other 9 men in his unit. Why? That's awful, isn't it? Why, though? Well, you only got to make an example of 1 or 2 guys, and the rest of them realize you're dead serious. If the GOP primary voter of Texas, and yes, there will be ways nationally you can contribute, but if the GOP primary voter of Texas is successful in taking out a useless loser like John Cornyn in a primary, it will send a message to the Mike Rounds of the world. Hey, be really careful, because we'll come for you next. John Cornyn responded. Here's what he said.
Do you have any level of concern about Paxton running to the right of you in this primary?
Well, the biggest potential loser is President Trump's agenda. I've been a supporter of the president during his first term of office, and that's continued during his current term. Mr. Paxton has a checkered background. He is a con man and a fraud, and I think the people of Texas know that.
What you just heard was a poll-tested response from John Cornyn, and get ready for a lot of it. Right now, Ken Paxton is polling comfortably ahead of John Cornyn in a primary. That's good news. The bad news is this. John Cornyn has a strategy here, a strategy that it might work. The strategy is Operation Trump Suck-Up. That's what it is. He's already running ads out there. Look at what a big supporter of Trump is. Me and Trump, Trump and me and Trump, Trump and me. That'll be the theme of the Cornyn campaign. I love Trump. Trump's my best friend. I love Trump. Trump this and Trump that. And that brings us to our risk here. You've heard me rant about it before. Donald Trump is very good at a lot of things. In fact, we're going to talk about the tariff stuff from China today. We'll talk about the good for sure. But if you had to point out a flaw, Donald Trump is the worst selector of who to endorse in a primary I think I've ever seen in my entire life. He's just terrible at it. When it comes to internal GOP politics, he will try to primary Chip Roy and Thomas Massie, and the next day he will endorse Lindsey Graham. He's just really, really bad at GOP politics. And as we speak, the rumor mill in D.C. says that Senate leader John Thune is working very, very hard lobbying Donald Trump to endorse John Cornyn. We have an opportunity here to take out a rhino, to do something really important for the entire United States of America. Let's cross our fingers Trump doesn't torpedo our efforts. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I'm right. Expenses are a nightmare. Aren't they the worst? Isn't it the worst time in the world when it's expense season? I hate it in my own life. My wife will text me, do you have a receipt for this? Do you know which category does this go with? Were you at a, it's awful. How much time, how much effort, how many resources do you have to sink into it? It's a nightmare. The Ramp corporate card eliminates that nightmare. It does it all for you. It does it all for you so you can stop chasing things down. And now for a limited time, listeners of this show get $250 when you join Ramp. Go to ramp.com/Jesse. That's ramp.com/Jesse. Cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. Joining me now, the amazing Megyn Kelly, journalist. Everybody watches, listens to her show on Sirius XM. And I guess I have to introduce her as MK Media's Megyn Kelly. Megyn, what's MK Media?
We are expanding and bringing other podcasts into the MK fold. And by that, I mean we're going to help other podcasters make it in this lane. We are starting with 3 shows that we're going to help promote and help produce and just try to get some more sane voices out there, Jesse. As you know, they're few and far between.
There are few and far between. And I'm glad actually you're doing it very much because I tell people all the time that you should start a podcast. You know, people will complain about this guy or that guy or Megyn Kelly or me or something like that. And I say, start one. Everyone should. Maybe you have something interesting to say. Maybe you don't, but you don't know till you try.
I totally agree with that. And so my feeling, having been doing it now for 5 years, is it actually is trickier than it looks to make it hit, you know, to like grow. It really is. And so if we see somebody who we think is really talented or whose voice we think should be amplified, we'll have them on the show. Like you don't need our help, but we loved talking to you. But there are people who don't have your platform and, you know, your experience doing this. And so we're kind of looking for people like that who need some help, like boosting their show off the ground. And we struck a deal with 3 providers or podcasters who we think are very diverse and like where they're going to come into this world from. So I think you'll love it. You're going to like these shows.
I have no doubt. Everything Megyn Kelly touches turns to gold anyway. All right, Megyn, tariffs. Speaking of gold, we're all buying it right now because the stock market sucks. What are your thoughts on the tariffs?
I'm so sick of talking about the tariffs. Is it just me?
Me too.
I refuse to get upset about this. Don't look at your 401k. Just don't look at it. Don't make any don't sell anything and don't withdraw anything right now. Just wait it out. Wait for the market volatility to settle, which it will. Take a deep breath. And I really feel like just give Trump a chance. You know, the main people complaining about what's happening right now are rich media types who are watching their own very lucrative stock portfolios. Well, this wasn't done for them. Not everything Trump is going to do will be for them. This is an attempt to restore some possibility for the bottom half when it comes to the earners. And I think those who are in the top half should maybe just be a little quieter while we see whether this can work, while we see whether there really is a chance to bring back manufacturing to the United States or to reorder this globalized world situation that has not been working very well for the guys who built this country. So I don't think in any world does Trump let this thing go into a recession and let the pain be felt up and down the economic line for very long. He's too much of a politician for that. He loves to be loved, and he loves rich people, loves rich people. So he's not going to let those people suffer for that long. But just be quiet for a little bit and let the people who are at the bottom half of the economic ladder have a shot at a life that used to be the norm here in America. That's what he's doing.
I'll say this about rich people. They always have good seats to the game. You always want to be friends with some rich people because they always have some kind of choice luxury box
True.
or something like that. If you butter them up,
I know a couple of those people,
you
and
get
the
Megyn
luxury
Kelly
box
invite.
is a good thing.
It is. It is. All right, Megyn. Brooke Rollins was on with Jake Tapper, and she kind of dunked on him. It was hilarious. Here it was.
You've got 2 days of data. Everyone, especially on your side, on the left, is freaking out.
I'm not on the left.
But at the end of the day, listen, this whole concept. All right, Jake, thank you.
Megyn, why do they have to do this? What is it about this? Everybody with 2 eyes and 2 ears knows that Jake Tapper is on the left. Is there really a market for someone on the left who pretends to not be?
I think, I don't actually know what his political positions are, but there's no question he can't stand Trump. No question. And so, I mean, I think that's what Brooke is picking up on, right? It's like, you obviously can't stand the president. I work for the president, and you're coming at me with your questions from a place of not being able to stand President Trump. And this is like the discussion I had with the New York Times a week ago. I went into the buildings there, Jesse, sat down in the belly of the beast. And I was trying to say, like, if the Times would just own its bias, it would really go a long way toward defanging some of us on the right in the many, many attacks we launch on you. If you would just be honest about your bias, you don't have to be so defensive about it. You know, this is what I was saying to this woman, Lulu Garcia Navarro, at the Times and about the Times. And I really think this is true for most journalists. Just in Jake's, like in his case, he should have said exactly where he is. He should have said, like, that was an opportunity. If he wants to come out with, I'm not actually a leftist, that's great. I'm open-minded. Where do you stand? That's what also needs to happen in order for people to actually start trusting you and your opinions.
Megyn, you always seem to get your hands on some good, juicy exclusives. Let's talk about the manifesto, the Nashville manifesto. Everyone remembers that terrible, terrible school shooting with that tranny shooter, and it was bad. Well, the FBI tried to hide it. You got your hands on it. What happened?
Yeah. Biden's FBI tried to hide it and did hide it. And the Nashville police were keeping it behind, locked doors. And it wasn't until Trump and Kash Patel got in charge and took over the FBI that they finally made sure it got out there. And, they gave us permission to reveal that they're the ones who gave it to us, the FBI. And so we have it, and we went through it, and it's 1,000+ pages, and it's deeply disturbing. And there's no reason for any of us to spend a lot of time thinking about what this sick, sick woman was thinking. But we have to spend just some time, because there's a reason they hid it from us for 2 years. There is a reason. The little that they reported out last week, the Nashville police, was a 48-page document that basically excused the whole gender thing as a non-factor. This wasn't what caused it. And put almost nothing, I mean, literally one paragraph of a nothing burger in there when it comes to this woman, Audrey. I'm not going to say her last name. I'm just saying it because you need to know about the trans thing. And gender, one paragraph. Well, we looked through all 1,100 pages or so. She was obsessed, Jesse, obsessed with the gender thing. And not just the gender thing. But I mean like page after page on the gender stuff. Like, this was not a one-off. This is not just like, maybe I'll try he, him. No, she was deeply disturbed and angry over the fact that she didn't know more about the trans options when she was younger, and people were calling her she and her instead of he and him and so on. But it was, on top of that, like a syllabus of information that you would get at Brown University or Harvard or any of these leftist universities right now, Jesse, on how much she hates America, how evil America is, how terrible it is present day to Black and brown people, how she hates being white. Whites ruin everything. She's obsessed with race. She's obsessed with gender. She absolutely loathes the country. And to me, it became very clear, reading page after page, why they wanted to hide this, because this is their agenda. I mean, this is all the stuff they tout, shoved down the throats of our children, trying to tell us that this is what you have to study and believe to be kind. And this woman's so-called manifesto, whatever you want to call it, it's multiple pages and multiple documents, just puts the lie to that being any sort of force for good.
Megyn, honestly, maybe the sickest part of this whole thing is that the FBI hid it. And look, I like Cash. I'm a fan and frankly a friend of Dan Bongino. So this is not about those two guys. But Megyn, you tell me the federal law enforcement arm of the United States of America spent 3 years burying a manifesto because it might make tranny people look bad. Megyn, I tell you that's an organization that doesn't need a little nip here and a little tuck there. That's an organization that cannot be saved. What do you say?
I agree with the words you just spoke. It's sick. I don't know how many school shootings I've covered since I became a reporter, Jesse. Man, I was on campus at Virginia Tech when that happened, and I was a very new reporter, still living in D.C. I've gone through a lot of these. I don't remember one where they wouldn't give us the so-called manifesto. And all along, we've been wondering, like, what the hell's in this document that it's, we can't see it? This is the one that we can't see. No, there's nothing so uniquely disturbing. They're all deeply disturbing. They all talk about, the worst of the worst things they want to do. What's different about this one is every left-wing ideology is touted, embraced, espoused. She's taken it to heart. And, Nashville, Petey, Nashville's Democrat. Nashville went for Kamala. Just because it's in Tennessee doesn't mean it's right-wing. And so I really think this is a leftist town under a leftist government, and the same for the FBI for its tenure over the recent years, that decided their favorite little issues were not going to take a beating once this thing came out. And so they already got their wish in large part by making it drag for 2 years. Stephen Crowder, to his credit, got his hands on 3 pages of it. That was helpful. But they didn't want us to see it. And enough time has passed now that the attention on it will be diminished. So they've won in part. But you're right. As far as the FBI itself goes, I think we're going to have to go down to the studs to get anything that comes close to being useful.
Megyn, thank you for everything. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon. I love my cell phone company. I love patronizing companies that are America first. Hiring Americans shouldn't be like a secondary issue anymore. And for the longest time, I didn't pay attention to that in my youth. I wish I had. It matters. It matters. Companies that focus on hiring Americans, creating American jobs. Pure Talk, they're on the same 5G network. So when you have, the big guys, AT&T and those guys, don't think that you're getting better service than I do. Pure Talk will let you keep your phone or give you a new phone if you want it. You keep your phone number or a new one if you're trying to hide from your ex-wife. Pure Talk will save you a fortune for the same service. Only you get to support an American company for less money. Why wouldn't you switch? puretalk.com/JesseTV allows you the freedom to support an American company for less money. puretalk.com/JesseTV. Let's have a discussion, shall we, about communists and their use of violence and threats of violence. Why is that always how it goes? Okay, but you know what? Put that in your back pocket for a moment. Let's talk about something good because it's going to lead us there. First of all, Supreme Court finally stepped in. They stepped in and they said, hey, Justice Boasberg, this commie justice in D.C., you can't just step in and rule the United States of America. Sorry, you're being removed from this. We're going to deport people from Trent. Okay, so we had to jump through 1,000 hoops in order to get the Supreme Court to finally put this judge in his place. And the Supreme Court ruled. And it should be noted, Senator Eric Schmidt says he was tipped off.
Judge Boasberg, over the weekend, it came out, he's not the emergency judge in D.C. He inserted himself in that role. He was on vacation. The case was filed at 2:30 in the morning. Somehow he ended up with that case. He wasn't the emergency judge on duty. So I think this requires further investigation and legislation. He's the chief judge and he inserted himself. That doesn't happen. The emergency judges 100% of the time get those cases. So he could have been tipped off that this was going to be filed. And while on vacation, he took the case. So again, this speaks to, I think, the very aggressive, unusual, and unprecedented measures that these activist judges are taking to insert themselves. Ultimately, they're not going to be right. The Supreme Court's going to slap them down.
Okay. Look, I'll be honest with you, just you and me talking. I'm in an absolutely terrible, terrible mood today. So I am not going to go off on what it probably means for the country that it took like 3 months and a bunch of hoops to jump through in order to justify legally deporting a bunch of barbarians the Biden administration brought in. I'm not even going to go there right now. I'm going to focus on the Supreme Court because the vote today was interesting. You see, it was 5-4. And guess who voted against us again? Amy Coney Barrett. So just let's pause on this and let's dwell on this for a moment. A communist, Boasberg, he wears a judge's robes. He has very obviously, it's obvious to anybody paying attention at all, he has decided he's going to be the vanguard protecting the communist revolution from President Donald Trump. And so every chance he's gotten, he has assumed the mantle of leadership of the United States of America and stopped the lawful things Donald Trump was doing. Anybody who's a reasonable actor would look at this and say, it's got to be criminal. This is way over the top. This can't be done. And yet Amy Coney Barrett sided against us. Why? Okay, well, let's talk about the why, shall we? Amy Coney Barrett, I don't know her personally, but I can't help but think back to something she said during the confirmation hearing. Remember when she said this about her family?
As I said when I was nominated to serve as a justice, I'm used to being in a group of 9, my family. Nothing is more important to me, and I'm very proud to have them behind me. The confirmation process and the work of serving on the court, if confirmed, requires sacrifices, particularly from my family. I chose to accept the nomination because I believe deeply in the rule of law and the place of the Supreme Court in our nation.
Okay. You probably don't have any problem with what she just said, and neither do I. She's a wife. She's a mother. Nothing more important than my family. Frankly, I'd be disappointed if she didn't feel that way. She feels that way. But this brings me back to a topic we opened up the segment with. The communist and his love of violence, his unending love of violence. We can look back on quote after quote after quote after quote of communist leaders saying violence is necessary. They've never once called for it to stop. In fact, they've repeatedly encouraged their followers, whatever country it takes hold in, to commit acts of violence. Revolution without end. Mao talking about all political power comes from the barrel of a gun. Violence, violence, violence. This is programmed into them. It's programmed into America's communists. I saw a poll this morning that said 55% of people on the left think, it's not a big deal if Donald Trump gets assassinated. Assaults, violence, murder, vandalism. Why? What is it about communists that this just becomes second nature to them? You've probably seen this. Maybe you've even experienced this in your life. Maybe you've been online or something like that and you saw a Democrat, a leftist, say something along the lines of, somebody should post his address. Post his address. What's that? Post his address. Post her address. It's a call for violence. We don't have to mince words. That's what that is. It's a threat. It's a very obvious threat. Somebody put up where this guy lives so we can go threaten him, maybe even hurt him. Why is this second nature to them? Because it's a tactic, you see. It's planned. It's why representatives like Jayapal speak like this.
We might call this getting strike ready. I think of it as getting us strike ready or street ready. And part of that is understanding our own strength. And as we develop that strength, being able to assess our risk tolerance, because we know that risk tolerance increases as the severity of the situation increases and as our own understanding of what's happening increases. So overall, the more we understand what's effective, what the risks are, and who's ready to participate, the more impact we can have.
The strike ready portion of that's getting all the publicity. You heard what she just said. That was a very, very academic, very proper way to say our strength is in the mob of rabid street animals we have at our disposal, and their willingness to be arrested, to be punished by the law. That will determine what our strength is. They don't have the office of the presidency. They don't have the Senate. They have don't have the House, but they do have a willingness to commit acts of violence, and their leaders encourage them to do so. People like this savage.
My name is Gracia Martinez Rosas. I am an immigrant. I am undocumented, unafraid, queer, and unashamed.
Could you even imagine if that animal came at you? Outside of your weight class. Anyway, back to Amy Coney Barrett. Back to the communists. Why are they so in love with violence? Why do they encourage it? Why do they commit violent acts wherever they can get away with it? Because of people like Amy Coney Barrett. Because it works on her. Here's what I believe. I believe Amy Coney Barrett is afraid. I believe she is a mother, a wife with a family she adores. And that's good. That's good for her. I want to be clear about that. That is good. But the communist doesn't see that and thinks to himself, wow, that's really good. The communist sees that and he sees an opportunity. So when Chuck Schumer is out there giving speeches, threatening justices with reaping the whirlwind, when an assassin flies from California with a gun ready to blow Brett Kavanaugh's head off, you may be mortified. I may be mortified, but American Democrats sit back and love it because they understand the threat of violence equals political power for them. Why does the Supreme Court keep getting wishy-washy? Why do people like Amy Coney Barrett seem not on our side? Because Amy Coney Barrett is afraid. She has been made to be afraid, as any parent is when they look at their children and think about all the bad things that will happen to them. What if Amy Coney Barrett votes against the communists? What might they do? Well, the communists have said and shown repeatedly over and over and over again, they will kill. They will hurt you. It's why it was such an incredibly big deal. Do you remember when the protests started happening in front of the Supreme Court justices' homes? That's blatantly against the law, by the way. It's against federal law. You're not allowed to intimidate the Supreme Court in order to make rulings. It's a federal law for a reason. They don't want the communists to be allowed to do that. So why did the Biden administration allow that to happen? Why? Because they knew full well that the threat of violence, feeling physically afraid for yourself, your husband, your wife, your children, your sister, your brother, your parents, is a benefit to them. It is something they can always keep in their back pocket and pull out when necessary. Now, they don't have any power, including the Supreme Court, but the power they do have, as you just heard from Jayapal, is the willingness to commit acts of violence on behalf of the revolution. And for weaklings like Amy Coney Barrett, the pressure is simply too much. So she has to sit at home at night. She knows what the right thing to do is. She has to sit at home at night when these ridiculous cases are laid on her desk, and she's not sitting there thinking about what is legal, what is lawful, what is constitutional. She's sitting there picturing her children and saying to herself, what might happen to them if I go astray? That's the kind of country we have now. I love to sleep. I love it. And there's just something, look, I'm a big believer in kind of starting out on the right foot, if you will, in business meetings. That's why you shake hands, look them in the eye. When you're picking up your honey for a date, oh, you look pretty, not, hey, did you get the dishes done? It's setting the tone, I guess I should say. When you have a good night's sleep, you wake up in the morning, it sets the tone for your entire day. If you slept great, you know it immediately. When you wake up, you can tell how you feel, you're ready. And when you didn't sleep, you know today's gonna suck. Dream powder from Beam will have you sleeping like a baby every single night. Did you know that? Up to 40% off at shopbeam.com/Jesse Kelly. It's a cup of hot chocolate that'll put you to sleep. Go now.
Yes. Julio Rosas, Blaze Media.
Oh, pleasure.
How you
Pleasure.
doing?
Very fine. How are you?
I just wanted to ask you how it feels to see that the United States has a secure border now that President Trump is in office, as opposed to when you were Secretary of Homeland Security. Do you have any regret facilitating an open border, sir? Border crossings are down 95%. Do you regret allowing Tren de Aragua to gain a foothold in the United States, sir?
Unattended baggage is subject to search, inspection, damage, and removal.
You don't have anything to say, sir, about your time as Homeland Security Secretary? Facilitating an open border?
You know what makes me so angry about that clip? Honestly, I could feel my blood pressure rising as we bring in Julio Rosas, national correspondent with The Blaze. What drives me crazy is they were walking by yet another restaurant that was being built in the airport. Are there any of these restaurants that are actually open, or is every single airport in the country building a good restaurant that you can't eat and drink at yet? Julio, talk about that.
Well, thankfully, because since I travel so much, I use the Centurion Lounge whenever that's available to me. So I'll let you I'll let you deal with those restaurants.
Okay, Tommy Topper. I didn't realize that's what we were going to do today, Julio. Some of us don't have access to the Centurion Lounge. Okay, I don't even know what that is, but it sounds Roman. What was it like, though, speaking to the former head of DHS, the man who facilitated the barbarian invasion of the country that you and I love so much?
It was weird. Just because obviously this is a man that I had paid a lot of attention to, obviously, during the entire Biden-Harris administration. The last time I was able to ask him a question was during the Haitian bridge crisis in Del Rio, Texas, and that was all the way back in 2021. He as you can imagine, he wasn't too happy with my question even back then, and so it was just weird. Just because I wasn't expecting to see him when I was traveling to Washington, D.C. And once I realized that, he's here and I can actually finally, after all this time, ask him stuff. So I obviously wanted to say a lot of things, but to remain professional, I wanted to, make sure I asked the right questions. I understand there's a lot of things that I, thinking back on it, which I wish I could have also asked, although obviously I'm sure that his answer would have remained the same, which was obviously nothing. But it's just another reminder that, this guy did this for 4 years. He stayed the entire time. People could say, well, maybe he was trying to fight it on the inside and, maybe not have disagree with it. He's like, well, okay, that's fine. But then he could have left. He could have quit. He could have said that this isn't working, but he didn't. He made his choice to stay and continue to follow the orders from the White House to open our borders, allow this invasion, come hell or high water. And so I understand people have a lot of questions as to why he's not in jail. That's another fair question, and it's something that I hope that the Trump administration at least addresses at some point in the near future, because the damage that this man did to our country is profound. It's long lasting, and it's creating all these problems right now that the Trump administration is having to clean up. And as we can probably guess, it's probably all not going to be entirely solved at the end of President Trump's second term.
No, of course it won't. You're not removing 20 million people in 4 years. It's easier to bring them in than get them out. It's just not possible. And honestly, I'm glad you brought up the evil, the treasonous nature of it, Julio, because I just can't get it out of my mind how inherently evil all this was. These people created an app to facilitate, not to allow, to facilitate the invasion of our country. People forget our taxpayer dollars created an app for foreigners to come into the country. It's just so bonkers it doesn't seem real.
And the whole reason why they did that is because the optics of thousands of people crossing the border every day illegally was tanking the numbers, and so they said, well, we have to do something. It's like, well, if we abuse the parole authority that we have, and we'll let them in, day by day through this app, that will make things better for us politically. And of course, that's not thankfully, people didn't buy that lie, right? People didn't buy this, oh, well, everything's fine now because there's CBP1, because then we got cases, and in some ways it's even worse because now we got cases of where they're supposedly being, checked out with their background and criminal history, and okay, they're good to go. And they just purposefully released these people who went on to commit horrific crimes. So, and it's all through the app, right? And so it is very angering. I've been feeling better about it. I mean, I just come back from El Paso recently. Obviously, nothing is happening there these days compared to 4 years ago, or during those 4 years. But just because that it's finally over and things are now going in the right direction, like I said, people need to be held accountable for it. It's unfortunate that the expected response is like, well, they're probably not going to get away. They're probably nothing's going to happen to them. Yeah, I mean, he's just walking freely through the airport with what I presume to be his wife, and they're just going about their day as if nothing happened. And so, even though, yes, I know I guessed that he wasn't going to answer my questions, he wasn't going to like my questions. It's just at least it was to tell him, hey, people don't forget. There's still people out here that still want answers from you because you were a big part of this. And if another opportunity arises to question him again, obviously I'm more than happy to do that. But it was a very profound moment just for me personally, just because I spent so much time at the border. I've been tracking it, I've been seeing it, and so to finally have 2 minutes, right, to just hit him with questions and to have his non-response sink in. It was, admittedly, it was satisfying. It was really satisfying for me, even though it wasn't obviously what we wanted necessarily.
Yeah. Julio, how were things in El Paso at the border? A lot of people don't know, but El Paso means the pass in Mexican. What was it like down there?
The Border Patrol agent that I was with, it was early morning, the sun was rising, and he said something that I hadn't thought of in a while, which was, it was very peaceful. It was actually peaceful, right? And you just had the chickens in the neighboring Mexican border town that were just they're the only noise being made. But it was crazy, right? I mean, that was the first time I was able to actually do anything with Border Patrol since October of 2020 in El Paso, in the El Paso sector. That was the last time I was able to do anything with them in any official capacity, because obviously once things got out of control, the Biden DHS didn't want media to be with Border Patrol to actually see firsthand what was happening. So we had to go through Texas DPS. We had to go through the Border Patrol Union. We had to find all these different. We had to go into Mexico to see things from that side, right? And that obviously has its own dangers. But we did it because we couldn't go through the official United States Border Patrol. So I'm thankful that the Trump administration has opened access back up again to that. But of course, now things are over. And the story itself isn't over, right? And there is always going to be problems at our border, but it is just, I mean, it's a night and day difference, right? And we know that. But to see that finally, when El Paso, they had the bum rush at one of the bridges, that was where Venezuelans stormed and attacked the National Guardsmen. It's where they had those street releases in the middle of winter because Border Patrol couldn't hold anybody, so they had to release them out into the street, and they were homeless. So El Paso has been through a lot, along with obviously the rest of the border. So to see just things actually normal and things how they are actually supposed to be with a secure border, again, it was weird. It was weird, but it was good to know that at least for now, this is how things are going to be. And I can tell you that the majority Latino residents along the border are very, very happy that things are finally, there's not a border crisis on their backyard anymore.
I bet they are. Julio, Semper Fi, brother. Thank you. All right, it is time to lighten the mood. And let me just say really quickly before we get to J.D. Vance and his mother that I know a lot of people struggle with addictions of various things. Addiction is one of these things that plagues human beings. It just does. And maybe you have struggled, maybe you are struggling with it, whatever it is, drugs, alcohol, I don't know, whatever it is. I'm not your priest. You don't have to tell me. But I just want to encourage you that you can keep struggling and win. Eventually, it feels insurmountable at times. I know it does. Feels like you'll never get out of it. You can get out of it. J.D. Vance's mother is actually a wonderful example of this. Remember when he said this at the RNC?
And I'm proud to say that tonight my mom is here. 10 years, clean and sober. I love you, Mom. And you know, Mom, I was thinking, it'll be 10 years officially in January of 2025. And if President Trump's okay with it, let's have the celebration in the White House.
Turns out President Trump was okay with it, and J.D. Vance made good on the promise to his mother, celebrating her and her 10 years of sobriety at the White House. It's pretty cool, and let it serve as an inspiration to you. You don't have to be the mother of the vice president to overcome. Just keep struggling. Even if you fail today, if you're struggling, you're winning. You'll get there, all right? See you tomorrow.